Welcome to our podcast for college Catholics, where we discuss faith and spirituality from a Catholic perspective. I'm Father Patrick. Today we will continue speaking about the Fifth Commandment, and I have a guest with me today, Father John of God, a priest of Miles Christi, and we will be discussing some aspects of this commandment, particularly in reference to the life of the unborn. Father John of God was born in 1985, joined Miles Christi in 2006, and was ordained a priest in 2016. He has been in our community of Miles Christi in Michigan as the director of formation of our students to the priesthood for several years now. And he has preached countless retreats and has spent hundreds of hours serving the faithful through confession and spiritual direction. Father John of God, how are you doing? And welcome to our podcast.
Thank you, Father Patrick. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks be to God. After the Thanksgiving break, we had a great Thanksgiving celebration in our house, in our community. How have you been? What have you been doing lately?
Doing great. It's great to be back in the podcast. And yeah, I also enjoyed the Thanksgiving break a lot. It's also always good to give thanks to God in family and community, with the visit of the fathers from Denver, Father Richard and Brother Francis, that came to visit us from there. And before that, I just had a retreat in New York.
Nice.
Actually in New York State, in the north of the city of New York. But I had the opportunity of visiting New York for the first time, the city of New York.
Wow.
I stayed at the house of a very good friend of ours, and he took me to Times Square for my first time. So it was an experience, I would say.
What did you like most?
Well, I don't know if I liked it. I was more...
The question is what you liked most.
Right. I guess we had dinner in a place called Bubba Forest, I think, or something like that. It's a known place in New York. And we had mariscos, that was good. And when we were looking from the window to the square, so that was interesting. Yeah.
Do you happen to have snow at all this weekend?
There was not that weekend. It was actually a fantastic weekend.
We had snow in Michigan.
Did you? Okay.
Yes, a little bit, but it snowed. You couldn't. Yeah, it was all white.
Right. No, it was beautiful there. Really enjoyable.
And now, how are you looking forward to the season of Advent? Now we're starting Advent, the preparation for the coming of the Lord.
Yeah, it's back, right? It's incredible. How we are already in December, and it is a beautiful season, so very much looking forward to it, to get ready for the beauty and the sweetness of Christmas, and a nice having the time, liturgical time, to prepare, to slow down as much as possible, at least interiorly, and to focus on the great mystery of Christmas, which is the birth of our Lord Jesus Christ. Right,
and also that season of Advent and season of Christmas gives a lot of meaning, theological meaning, to the commandment we're talking about, the "Thou shalt not kill," because our Lord also became a human being in the womb of the Virgin Mary, right? So we celebrate the feast of the conception or the incarnation of the Son of God in March, and already we adore Jesus made a man in the womb of the Virgin Mary, and then he's born in December, right? So it's incredible how from there the Church always, not just because of that, but primarily because of that, honors and respects the life of the womb and the embryo in the womb of the mother as a human being, right? And that human life has a special meaning because it has been purchased by Jesus Christ with his death on the cross. So he becomes man, a child, born of the Virgin Mary, who is now the Mother of God because of that, and he became man to redeem us from our sins. Right. So that gives meaning to this first commandment, to the Fifth Commandment.
It's incredible, Father, that one of my brothers in Argentina was asking me about why the Church celebrated Christmas, but did not celebrate the moment in which Jesus was conceived.
The incarnation, right?
The incarnation. And of course, the Church celebrates the moment of the incarnation before celebrated Christmas. So the original date of celebration is actually March the 25th.
Right.
And from there is that there is origin to the celebration of Christmas on December 25th.
Right.
So absolutely, so it is beautiful to contemplate the Lord God becoming man from the very first moment of his conception in the womb of the Virgin Mary.
Right. So, so the fifth commandment speaks about not killing the innocent, as we read in the book of Exodus, in chapter 20, thou shalt not kill, right? The fifth commandment, and how we spoke about this in the previous episodes, how human life is sacred because from its beginning it involves the creative action of God, and it remains forever in a special relationship with the Creator who is its sole end. So that's from the Catechism number 2258. And also that leads to the other concept that terminating any life, innocent life, is always gravely sinful. And therefore, in the same way, if we believe, and as we do, that life, the human life is already present at the conception of the embryo, therefore, the number 2270 says, human life must be respected and protected absolutely from the moment of conception. From the first moment of his existence, human beings must be recognized as having the rights of a person, among which it is the inviolable right of every innocent being to life. Right. So how would you present this for college students, and if you were to present the teaching of the Catholic faith, and what are the aspects of this important aspect of not killing the unborn child?
It's great topic, right? And very current topic, very important topic. The first thing I will say, I think that we all agree that is something that has to do with natural law. It's so basic that I personally think that any person understands that there is a gravity in abortion. Even though maybe because of the media or because of the pressure, they don't reflect deep enough and they say, oh, abortion could be okay. I think that in the end, there is an understanding in human law and natural law that perceive abortion as a grave thing, right? And I think that when you talk to people and are open and are willing to accept the truth, I think they will recognize that. Many times if they are too ideologized, is that how you say it? Ideologized, right? They might deny it, but and then if it is natural law, the strength of it or the force of that law comes from divine law, which is the law of God, right?
Right.
So I think that the beautiful thing of recognizing life as precious, it is because it is a gift from God. It's given to us. And we don't have the right to determine who lives and who doesn't live. We don't have the right to determine on that life. When there is a human person, is a gift given by God, and no other human person has the right to decide about the existence of that human person, right?
Right. I would say that the problem is that sometimes there is no belief in God, right? So when a person does not believe in God, you're already starting from a perspective of a certain denial, right? So there's a denial of a very important element of all this equation, that is that human being is created by God. And then also, if there's materialism, when people don't believe in the spirituality of the soul, or that God has infused the soul in a human being, or finally, the disregard of human life in general, when we become, for example, if there's Marxism or communism, or or even in extreme capitalism, where the individual becomes an instrument of the whole system, right? So the system becomes more important than the individual. But as Catholics, we believe, we're stating, because God wanted it that way, that the individual has an importance and sacredness by itself. And we cannot make a partial well-being of society depend on the destruction of an innocent human being. Of all the human beings that are innocent, the most innocent one is the one that hasn't done anything yet and has just started to be in the embryo in the womb of the mother, right? And that is why it is the most innocent, defenseless, and dependent on the well-being of the defense or the protection of the mother, right?
Yeah, that is why it makes it even more sacred to respect life at that stage in existence in life, right?
Right.
Because, as you say, they are defenseless, and the mission of the mother and the mission of society and the mission of any institution is to protect that life that receives all the future from actually being able to continue. Right.
And also, sometimes another thing that happens is I think that although the mother is very much aware of the presence of the child in her womb, even from the beginning, because of all the changes that happen in her body, for many others, especially people that are less interested in that particular human being, they may forget or not realize that there's a child, there's a human being. But God is well aware of the presence of that child. And that's why we read in the book of Jeremiah, when Jeremiah is a prophet, right, called by God, and he's struggling with his call to be a prophet, God tells him, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. And before you were born, I consecrated you, right? Jeremiah chapter 1. So how the prophet is called to be a prophet already from the womb of his mother, right? So God knew him present in the womb of the mother.
And yeah, absolutely. And that is not only the case of a prophet. That's the case of everyone, each single individual, every person that is brought to the world. Everyone who is born and who starts to exist has a purpose. God has willed that person and has a goal in life, right?
Right, a goal in this life and then the next. So it's an eternal destiny.
Absolutely. And that is an important thing, right? So how life is the foundation, not only for any other human right, but also for all the supernatural rights that we have as a Catholic, receiving the faith and the sacraments and the right to eternal life, right? So that's why it's not just a matter of human law, right? But it's, as we were saying, it's a matter of, okay, everything depends on that moment.
It depends on God's law. There's a divine law. And how grave is the sin? So it's a sin, right, to commit abortion. Now, what I want to clarify, because we're going to talk a little bit later about other possibilities of protecting the life of the mother and so forth, where sometimes there can be unintentional abortions, right?
Right.
But direct intentional abortion, that is an action by which the termination of that life is produced directly and purposely, right? So that's an abortion.
Right.
How serious
and
is
it is
that?
important to clarify that it's as an end or a means.
Right.
Right. So abortion, which is purposely killing that innocent life as an end, like direct abortion, or even as a means, like for the mom to be good, for example, to feel good and not to feel the pains of abortion. Right.
Right.
And then,
So the idea would be that abortion can be an end in itself, right? So our purpose is to commit an abortion to eliminate this life for whatever reason we don't want this life. Or it can be a means to something else, but it's directly intended. So that means is intended for having, so that the family can have a better future, or so that society does not have so many people. So there's an ultimate end, but the abortion is directly intended as a means to an ultimate end.
Correct.
In either case, it is wrong.
In either case, it's a grave offense, meaning it's a mortal sin, of course, but it's much more than that. The Catechism of the Church speaks about abominable crime, which means one of the worst things that a human being can do against another, against the life of another, which it's penalized with one of the greatest punishments that the Church has, which is an excommunication.
Right.
which we can explain more if you want. What that means, right?
Excommunication would be when a person is separated from the fold of the church, right? And there's two ways of excommunication. One, by a decree, right? So the church, if a person does a certain crime or action that is bad, then that goes to a tribunal in the church, and the church can declare the excommunication of that person, or an excommunication late sentencia, that means directly by the same action that you commit, you are excommunicated by yourself, right? So this, the case of abortion, which one would that be?
It's a excommunication late sentencia. By the very fact of committing the abortion, the person incurs in the excommunication. And there are a few conditions for that, right? If the person knows that there is that punishment for that crime, right? Many times, some people, even Catholic, will not know that because of committing that sin, they will incur in this punishment, in this excommunication. If that is the case, the person does not fall into excommunication, right? But if the person knows that there is that punishment, well, the person does fall into,
And what is important of the excommunication in these cases is that you cannot simply go to confession and be absolved from the sin. You need to be, the excommunication has to be lifted up before you come back to communion. So you can go to confession, but the priest that you go to confession has to have the authority to lift up the excommunication, which nowadays it's most priests, right? But for many years, the excommunication, the forgiveness of the excommunication was reserved for certain priests only. Right?
Yeah, my experience is that in terrible cases, when I had the opportunity of hearing the confessions of people who aborted, they did not know of the excommunication, at least my personal experience, right? So I never had the case of having to absolve from an excommunication, right?
Now, regarding the abortion itself and the seriousness of the abortion, has the church always taught this, and could it change? You know, I mean, we're getting more modern in the world. The people, the science teaches so many things. Maybe the church changes its mind and allows abortion in the future. Is that possible? Has it been always this way? Has the church always taught about abortion being so seriously grave? What would you say?
Of course not. Of course, the church cannot change the doctrine on abortion because it's so basic and so radical that will never change her mind. And it's, again, rooted in natural law, is part of the commandments, is intrinsically evil, is this abominable crime. And we have always, from the very beginning, in the Gospels is very clear, right? In the Bible is very clear. In the letters of St. Paul is very clear. And then in the tradition of the church, from the very beginning, the Didache, which is a document of the 1st or 2nd century, speak clearly that is a crime. And the church has always renewed the condemnation. Two of the most important last documents on human life are Donum Vitae, the gift of life, of I think 1987
from the Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith.
Correct. And also the great encyclical Evangelium Vitae by John Paul II of 1995, right? So, and then more recent also, Pope Francis speaks about it all the time, right? How he condemns abortion. So that will never change. What could, in the theology, trying to explain all the mystery of the beginning of life and the mystery of abortion, and when the soul starts to kind of abide in the embryo, there have been some different theories that depending, of course, on the understanding of biology, right? So we don't have, in the past, in the Middle Ages, they did not have the understanding of biology that we have today, or the genetics, for example, right? So they might have, in the past, explained that maybe the soul was infused into the embryo after so many weeks. But today, with the understanding, the discovery of genetics, and also all the understanding of the first moment, right, the gestation, right, it is very clear that the egg, the kind of the coming together of
the egg and the sperm,
right, start a new life that is independent of the life of the mom or of the dad, right? And has in itself all the elements to develop as a human being, even to the adult stage.
So it cannot be considered a blob of tissue or an appendix of the mother or part of an organ of the mother, but it's completely a distinct human life, independent, autonomous, but still independent in the sense that the life is different,
right?
But it's dependent physically on the nutrition that comes from the mother.
Right. Science confirms the principle that is a new life, right? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that's why the still crazy slogan of my body, my choice, right? Which is okay. If that's not true first, right? But if that was true, that little cell, that little new embryo is not your body, it's a different body. And that, I think, science confirms it, and it's very, very clear.
That's why the church here in the Catechism says in 2271, I think it's good to read, since the first century, the church has affirmed the moral evil of every procured abortion. This teaching has not changed and remains unchangeable. Direct abortion, that is to say, abortion willed as either an end or a means, is gravely contrary to the moral law. And the church there quotes the Didache from the first century, but also the Second Vatican Council, and that's very important too. It says the following: life must be protected with the utmost care from the moment of conception. Abortion and infanticide are abominable crimes, right? So that's the Second Vatican Council and the decree Gaudium et Spes. And then it talks about excommunication, so and so forth. So you can read more there. Those who are listening can read a bit more in the Catechism number 2272. Now, what about the legislation, right? So can the state consider itself separately, so separate from the church that they can have civil laws that allow abortion, or can we vote for, can a legislator vote in favor of abortion? Should they promote abortion or not? And what are some principles that the Catechism teaches about all that?
Well, of course not, since this is so, the Catechism mentions is an inalienable right, correct? Meaning that must be recognized
by the civil society.
Correct. So the civil society and the law and the political authority must respect and recognize that right.
Right, of course.
So they always have to legislate in favor of it. So any legislation that goes against it is not a real legislation, it's not a real law, because it denies. I mean, whenever there is a law that supports abortion, that law loses the truth, loses the weight of law, right?
Right, and that's why even in any case, the laws have to protect that human life against abortion. And here, the Catechism says, as a consequence, this is the decree by the Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith, Donum Vitae. It says, as a consequence, the respect and protection which must be ensured for the unborn child from the moment of conception, the law must provide appropriate penal sanctions for every deliberate violation of the child's right. Right? So it's not wrong for the law to provide a sanction, a punishment, if you want to call it that way, for those who destroy the human life in the womb. Right? Because sometimes they're presenting like any type of punishment for those who commit abortion, like a terrible thing. How could you possibly do this? How could you possibly punish? So the state cannot punish the one who commits abortion, but the one who commits abortion can destroy the human life, right? And that seems to be rational. So no, the church clearly teaches that there should be sanctions for those who commit homicide. In any case, if you kill a person in the street, well, an innocent person, you need to be punished for that. And if you kill an innocent human being in the womb of the mother, there should be punishment for that too, according to the church's teachings. Okay, and so what are there any other consequences or other reflections about this that should be considered taken into consideration, or consequences from this principle?
Right, from the principle of the protection of the embryo
and the sacredness of the human life.
Right, so that also forbids, so the sacredness of human life that starts in the moment of conception forbids any, so the integrity of that embryo must be defended.
Correct.
Right, so should be not only protected, promoted, but you cannot manipulate. Right.
So what the church here, or what the Catechism teaches, first of all, the prenatal diagnosis is licit only when it's intended to provide health or promote the health of the embryo. But if it's prenatal diagnosis, sometimes is intended to select the children that we want or we don't want, and therefore it is possible to commit abortion if the child is not as nice as I would like him to be.
Right. Well, that's the case in Europe, for example. The people with Down syndrome is disappearing. I mean, they are not born, and that's not because they solved the Down syndrome. Right. It is clear that they are aborting them, right? Which is criminal, is tragic. And nobody speaks about it, but it's clear.
It's crying out to heaven.
Exactly. And the same with other malformations, which is very scary. It's very scary that this modern society is doing that.
Right. And another thing that is illicit as well, at least we read in the Catechism, is to artificially produce embryos, human embryos, for exploitation or for producing disposable biological material. And again, this is from Donum Vitae, chapter 1, number 5. It is immoral to produce human embryos intended for exploitation as disposable biological material, right? So there's much more to talk about this. In what cases would an unintended abortion be okay? For example, if the child dies unintentionally, sometimes we could call that an unintended abortion, because the life is terminated, right?
It's called a miscarriage, right?
Right, a miscarriage.
Right.
So that's not an abortion.
It's not, right.
And is it possible sometimes to provide any help for the mother if there's an illness, or how is the case of abortion and the health of the mother?
Right. So there's a difficult situation, right? Mm-hmm. So we said that the abortion cannot be procured directly, not for an end nor for a means. But there are some cases in which the mother, for example, has a serious illness, let's say a cancer, right? And the mother, whether she finds herself pregnant during the illness or before, right? And in those cases, the moral law says that mother could have a treatment against the cancer,
right?
Even in the case that treatment might cause the death of the embryo, the death of the baby. And that is valid, that is licit, and that is a choice of the mother. That is what makes the case of Saint Gianna Beretta Molla so important. The case of this mother who decided to postpone treatment for her cancer to allow the baby to be born, right?
Similar is the case of Chiara Corbella Petrillo, right? So she was aware of her baby in her womb. The baby was perfectly healthy. We have an episode in the past about this. The baby was perfectly healthy, but she was diagnosed with cancer, and she could have undergone treatment, but that would have damaged the baby's life. But it was still licit to do so.
Right.
But she chose to wait until the baby was born and then initiate treatment.
Right. Which was late and
too late for her. So
that makes those cases heroic, right? Because they give up their lives for the lives of the baby, and they are not obliged to do so.
Right. So that would be then the what is called the principle of double effect. right? So the principle of double effect is when, and it's licit in those cases, not to commit an abortion, but it's licit to undergo treatment, even if the death of the baby could come as an undesired
Second cause.
secondary effect. So, so the important thing here is we're trying to save the mother's life, right? There's a pregnant mother, and there's a treatment that is very aggressive and that could bring about the death of the child as a secondary effect. So that's a principle of double effect, and there's some conditions to be met. This is very summarized, so if someone wants to study more, they have to go to another better podcast than this one.
No, but you might talk about it again, right?
Right. So we'll try to see more in depth if we can. But for now, the conditions that must be met basically are the following. First, the action, the treatment that is being done, it has to be morally good, as to be a good moral object, or at least indifferent moral object, with its, as far as its object, its motivation, and the circumstances of that action, right? So it cannot be a direct abortion.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, the bad effects, that is, for example, the possible death of the child, may only be tolerated and not directly willed.
Mm-hmm.
The third condition is that the good effect, the health of the mother, right, must be caused at least as directly as the bad effect. So the result of the health of the mother has to be caused and intended more directly than, or as directly as, the death of the child. And then the good effects must be proportionate to compensate for the bad effect that is also a secondary side effect, if you want, or secondary effect. So in this case, for example, as we said, the treatment of a cancer of a mother would be licit, even if it happens to bring about unintentionally the death of the child.
Correct.
So, of course, this is very different from, let's say, an directly intended abortion. Now, there's an interesting thing here, and a clarification that I'd like to make, is that many times in the laws, people talk about abortions, except the health, when seeking the health of the mother. The problem with that expression, I see it this way, is that the term health is very broad and can be very ambiguous. And it can start to include, the psychological health of the mother, a certain physical health of the mother, financial health of the mother, the many other ways of understanding the health of a mother. Now, that is not the same as what we were talking before. What we were talking about is when we're trying to save the life of the mother, right? And there's an interesting quote from United States Surgeon General Everett Koop. He stated in 1980 the following about the cases of how many times the real life of the mother, or the death of the mother, can be prevented by a certain abortion, right? Or kind of abortion. And he says that those are extremely rare. Well, I'm going to read it because it's interesting to know what this Surgeon General of the U.S. said. In my 36 years of pediatric surgery, I have never known of one instance where the child had to be aborted to save the mother's life. If toward the end of the pregnancy complications arise that threaten the mother's health, her obstetrician will either induce labor or perform a cesarean section. His intention is to save the life both of the mother and the baby. The baby's life is never willfully destroyed because of the mother's life is in danger. Right? So this he said in 1980. And I think it's very interesting to see that there are very rare cases where the mother's life is really threatened by the embryo, or that the embryo can be saved and then the mother's life protected as well. So there are cases, of course, right?
That's correct.
And in those cases, if we address the health of the mother through treatment, we can try to still save the child's life, but not directly destroy it. Well, what other thoughts do you want to tell us that you'd like to share with us as a conclusion of this episode?
I would like to congratulate and to encourage all those who directly work in pro-life associations to promote the culture of life and engage on the streets, to talk with people and to try to bring the topic and convince them. And I think they do a great job, and I think it's needed. It's very necessary. And it's great. So I would encourage them to keep doing so. Many times we don't have our mission is different. We do support life, and we do encourage pro-life movements. We don't have the time maybe to get there and speak about this, but those who have it and do it, it's great, and they are bringing a lot of good, right, to this society, and allowing so many babies to be born, right? So that's
right. And I'd like to congratulate as well all those who love life, right? So love having children and try to bring children to this world, even at the cost of great sacrifices, right? And even if the child has some difficulty or some special needs, the parents that are loving manifest how valuable that life is, how precious in the eyes of God, right? And I think, and also this, for those who are going to the streets and promoting life, now they have a new episode here, episode 180 or 181 of the For College Catholics podcast to promote. Hopefully they can use it and as a tool and a reference. Well, thank you very much, Father John of God, for being with us.
You're welcome, Father. Thank you for having me. It was great.
And thank you, everyone, for being with us. I hope you have a very fruitful Advent season and Christmas season. We'll talk about that later. This is all for today. Thank you for listening, and please share this episode with your friends. And if you can, please leave a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and you can now find us on YouTube. So make sure you leave some comments there as well. Hope to see you next time, and may God bless your day.